Good morning. I'd like to introduce Kristen Latch. She's my mentor for the Teach Now section of the special education. So, good morning, Kristen.
Good morning.
So, we've got a few questions. They would like to get a bit of information about your background.
Sounds good.
So, I've got the questions they've suggested. So, can you please describe your job and your school?
Yep.
Our school.
Our school, yes. We are teaching at Brownsville Elementary School. It is in the CK School District. It is the oldest elementary school in the district, 60 years old. And I am the resource room teacher. So I serve the K through 5th grade special education students that are also integrated into the gen ed classrooms.
Okay. What drove you to want to be in the special education field?
I did my elementary education degree back in 1983. I graduated and needed to have a particular field that I was entering, and was also interested in psychology. So those two things went together to get a special education degree. And I went and got my master's in special ed as well.
Nice. All right. Have you collaborated with general education teachers to benefit your students?
Yep, and I do that on a daily basis. I think that's the best thing about dealing with the resource room kids is collaborating with the gen ed teachers, because they benefit so much from all of those teachers knowing their needs and what they getting served by me and by the gen ed teachers, and the collaboration between us as it's continued to happen through this whole COVID-19 thing has been key.
Good. Okay. Let's see. What special education strategies and techniques have you used to help your students?
So my philosophy about special education students as they are integrated into the classroom is all about motivation and what is a student's motivation for learning. So I have worked hard on different strategies to keep them engaged with their learning, keep them engaged in their gen ed classrooms, and try to motivate them to buy into their own learning. One of the ways that I've done that this year that we just was very successful was each student in my classroom had a punch card that's kind of like a coffee punch card, where whenever they did anything the right way or completed assignments or did a group well, they got a punch on their punch card. And I felt like that was very motivating to them, not just because they got to choose from the prize box when they got 20 punches, but because they really showed me by their eagerness to learn that that was really working for them. In addition, I got a new student about 6 weeks before we went out on our school closure, and that student was not bought into the system yet and got very interesting reactions from the other students that he was working with, because he wasn't doing the appropriate things, and they would say things like, "Don't you know we don't do that in here?" Nice. So it was really, really very successful this year, and I will do it again.
Good. Let's see, how have you encouraged parental involvement in student learning?
Parents are key in special education just because of the IEP process and the buy-in with the IEP. I really like to have kids involved in their IEP too, but oftentimes they don't want to come until they're in middle school, and then pretty much I would make them come. But the parents knowing what the goals are and what we're working on in their IEP is really key, but it's more key to have the kids knowing it, especially in 4th and 5th grade.
Alrighty. Let's see. How have you managed to keep up with the paperwork required of a special education teacher?
Paperwork is what everybody dreads, and it's just a management issue, figuring out your time and figuring out what hours of the day are for teaching and dealing with students and figuring out what hours of the day you can do the paperwork and the meetings and all of that stuff and get all of that organized. I think the biggest I've always felt like the biggest piece of my job is interacting with students, but the paperwork definitely takes up time too.
Do you have to work over and before school and after school, or is it pretty
Yes.
much just?
Yes, it's definitely a before school, after school thing. But our union has given us extra days to work on
Nice.
paperwork, so that makes up for
So there's some
the
help.
extra time.
Yep. Let's see. And how do you stay current with special education and best practices?
Mostly just the same way other people do with PD. Get a lot of emails coming across my desk, so have to kind of sort through those, which ones would be good to look at and good to look into. During this school closure time, it's been good to look at some of those a little more closely. When I'm at school, it's hard to find time to do that, but basically through the internet, you can keep up with most of the special education best practices.
Okay. So, and then I was thinking about the final one is, how are you about me asking questions for basically for my project, my final project? Are you all
Yeah.
about?
I'm absolutely fine with it.
What about writing it for me?
I had a student teacher last year, and she was already a teacher, but she was getting her special education master's, and she mostly just needed to learn how to do the paperwork. So I'm good with teaching you any of that stuff.
Great, thank you very much.
I can do it in my sleep, I think.
Good, I appreciate everything, and hopefully this video works.
Yeah.